each about the Ishvara, two aspects, about the Jiva, two aspects. Okay? Tomorrow I'll ask each question what are the two parts. We just discussed. Is there in the. Okay? So there are two questions, each has two parts. Tomorrow you should know the questions and the answer tomorrow morning. We already discussed the questions. We now will discuss the answers also.
One is this two one question only from 5 and 6 is.
Yeah, 5 and 6 one question only about the living entity. Living entity, how it is covered by the science, by the living entity. Suffering when the Supreme Lord is present. Simple. But you should be able to remember what is the question. Tomorrow morning. If you don't write down, you will not remember anything. It's there in the book. You could highlight in the book also. When we are reading, you would highlight the question in the book also. Okay, so now Shukdev Goswami begins to speak. Yes, text read. Translation.
Sri Sukadeva Goswami says, O King, Maitreya, being those agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first seemed astonished, but then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God conscious.
Okay, so these are questions like quite tricky questions in one sense. Not many people will know the answer to this. So therefore, he looked, kind of, oh, how will I going to answer this question? Maitreya expressed kind of little bit of bewilderment. Oh, it was very difficult question. But then he remembered the Supreme Lord mentioned, Bhagavad Chitta. As soon as he remembered the Supreme Lord, he got the answer and he began smiling. Okay? So at first, just he expressed some bewilderment, but remembering the Supreme Lord, he smiled and began to answer. So therefore, by the remembrance of the Lord, the answers immediately manifested. Therefore, before reading Bhagavatam, we offer our prayers so that we remember the Lord by His mercy. May we be able to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. May the Bhagavatam manifest in our heart. Every time individually we start reading Bhagavatam, with your heart pray to the Lord. May your words, not different from you, may manifest in my heart. May I understand the real meaning of Bhagavatam. So like in a prayerful mood, so therefore within his heart he remembered the Lord's lotus feet, he remembered the Lord and the answer manifested to him.
That's why we pray Narayana Namaskrityam.
Yes. Yes, so we should pray with consciously that I am praying so that I may be able to properly understand the true import of Bhagavatam. Every time we offer prayer, we should have that mood that what I am praying for. I am praying for the true meaning of the Bhagavatam to be revealed. Because Bhagavatam is revealed science, the revealed knowledge. Okay, so Maitreya begins to speak. Maitreya Uvacha Sriyam Bhagavato Maya Yannayena Viruddhate Ishwarasya Vimuktasya Karpanyam Utubandhanam.
Sri Maitreya said, certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman or the personality of Godhead is overcome by illusion or Maya, and at the same time they maintain that he is unconditioned. This is against all logic.
Okay. So he answers that first of all Maya belongs to the Lord. Same Bhagavato Maya, it belongs to the Lord. The living entity that covers the nice also belongs to Krishna. Nice also belongs to Krishna because that is many times the nice or the devil in the Western theology, devil has a separate existence from God. This devil is the computer of the God. Computer. Nice the devil. In the Western theology, devil which is considered like evil, evil has a separate existence from God. But Bhagavatam says Janmadi Yasya, evil is also born from Krishna only. There is a big difference. So there is absolute truth means source of everything. Even the evil has a source, the Maya which covers the energy of the Lord. How could Maya be energy of the Lord or which covers, causes ignorance? So the analogy is given, the cloud which covers our vision, the cloud which blocks the sunlight also are born from the sun only. Therefore everything in this world is creation by the Lord. But this Maya cannot cover the sun like clouds. Therefore Maya belongs to the Supreme Lord. And Maya powers are inconceivable and cannot be understood. Yannayen viruddhate. Or Maya is acting in a contradictory way, but it belongs to the Lord. What is the contradictory way? Maya causes darkness. Krishna is like the sun. Maya acts like in opposite way, but it's also created by God only. That is first he is explaining. And what is the cause of the living entity suffering is being answered here. Ishvarasya vimuktasya karpanyam udbandhanam. The jiva, Ishvarasya vimuktasya means the jiva can realize the Lord and be freed. But the jiva is bound, karpanyam here means actually misfortune. Misfortune. Karpanya durbhagatvam, as per Vishwanath Thakur. Durbhagatvam is misfortune. It is just living entity's misfortune. Though he can be immediately liberated by realizing the Lord, unfortunately, the misfortune, jiva is covered with beginningless ignorance.
Can you repeat again?
Though the living entity can be immediately delivered, but it is due to misfortune, jiva is covered with beginningless ignorance.
Beginningless?
Anadi, avidya. This avidya is anadi, beginningless ignorance. So therefore two things, and bandhanam means it is thus due to it is covered with the beginningless ignorance and it thus bound. The jiva is bound. What has happened is, jiva due to ignorance, when the jiva falls to ignorance, then what happens? The jiva wants to enjoy Maya. And the Maya embraces the jiva. So jiva has no power to get himself out of the embrace of Maya. Even when the jiva desires to free from Maya, the Maya embrace, no, he can't get out. You understand the point? Only like Krishna says, Maya Duratya. So out of ignorance, the jiva is covered with ignorance and the jiva is bound also. The two things. Bound by whom? By Maya. Maya has now also tightly embraced jiva. So jiva decided to enjoy Maya, but the Maya has now tightly embraced jiva. And jiva has no power to get out of the clutches. Or Maya has grabbed the jiva. So jiva's ignorance has to be destroyed and Krishna mercy has to get the jiva out of the clutches of Maya also. Two things. So jiva's misfortune is due to ignorance and being bound by Maya. Due to ignorance only, by one's own choice, jiva has been bound. It's a beginningless ignorance.
You said there are two things that should act. The ignorance should be cut and mercy should pull out of it.
Yes. Mercy should release the jiva from bondage. Text 10.
Just in mind. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off.
Okay. So, the suffering of the living entity is imaginary. The suffering of the living entity is imaginary. Actually, it should be written like this: the cause of suffering of the living entity is imaginary. Precise. The cause of suffering of the living entity is imaginary, like a dream. Person suffering in a dream. This is a very important point to understand jiva's misfortune. The cause of suffering is imaginary, and experience of suffering is real. Asat, Sat. This world is composed of Sat, Asat. This is Asat. Cause is Asat. What is the cause? If a person in a dream, person feels, oh, I have lost all my investment. Some people invest in this world, or I am being chased by something, or I just bought a new mobile phone and I lost it. A person is suffering in the dream. Something like that. Something goes wrong. The dream. The cause of suffering, imagining, right, in the dream. But the experience, real. Person starts sweating. Sweat comes out in the dream. Starts shouting. And the hairs are standing on end, sometimes extreme. Is it not?
Yes.
The experience is real. Experience is real. So the cause of suffering of the jiva is imaginary. But the experience of suffering is real. So there was sometimes said the jiva is suffering, is the jiva suffering real? Sometimes scripture say the suffering of jiva is imaginary. Sometimes scripture say the suffering of jiva, but we know it's real. We are suffering. So when the scripture says that the suffering of jiva is imaginary, it means cause. It means cause. There are many statements which says that the jiva suffering is imaginary. Means the cause is imaginary, but the experience of suffering is real. Is this point understood? Is this point understood?
Crossing tomorrow.
Yeah, I know.
No, ask now if you haven't understood.
No, I understand.
It's like in a dream. We are just thinking I have lost something, I am in a difficult situation, so on and so forth. The cause is. So this is we are talking of not just in a dream. In this material world, the living entities are suffering similarly to ignorance. That is like in a dream. Therefore, we are living here. We are daydreaming. At night we are dreaming.
Yeah.
But the whole material existence is daydreaming. The whole material existence is daydreaming. We are just imagining that I am suffering due to this, due to that.
Right.
All the causes are imaginary. They are not substantial.
Right.
Just like we imagine a body, in a dream body.
Right.
Right? Dream body. In a dream body we suffer. When we get up, we realize, oh, it was all foolish suffering, the cause was
Imaginary.
imaginary. Similarly, when we actually are liberated, awakened to real reality, we remember, oh, all my material existence was actually a nightmare, daydreaming.
This is false.
False. There is no substantial cause. So just like at night we are suffering, and we can imagine the dream suffering, the material existence of all living entity is like a dream-like suffering.
Right. So the cause of the suffering is imaginary because you're identifying with the material.
Material body. You identify the material body. Like in dream, you identify with some other body.
Right.
There is a dream body you take, and then we suffer.
Oh, like
Similarly, this is like dream-like body. When our real self is sleeping, and this material existence is like a dream-like suffering. So therefore, the suffering is imaginary, is mentioned. The suffering of the living entity is imaginary. In the sense, the cause is imaginary. But experience is real. Even in the dream, experience is real. Fine? Yes.
I could understand that when Krishna speaks to Arjuna, for example, you don't need to lament about this because I'm not actually dying. But also Bhishma says on the battlefield, a cause of suffering could be kala, could be karma, could be so many things, and ultimately it's Krishna.
Krishna.
So those things are real as well.
Yes.
What would you answer?
Okay, we'll take this question. Just note down somewhere. We'll take this question at the end of the class. But do you understand from the viewpoint of, from the view perspective of dream,
Yes.
dream-like body, the cause of suffering is imaginary. Similarly, this material existence is like dream-like existence. And Rupa says, when you are liberated, you go back to Godhead, you will realize at that point of time. Oh, just like you realize that you realize the cause was imaginary when you only get up, not before. So you realize my material existence was a dream life when we actually are liberated from that platform. Till then it will look like real. Till then we keep analyzing as it is the reality. I have actually answered your question. Later contemplate. But I will explain later.
So basically, what you mean to say is once you get out of
Only after awakening you realize that it is a dream-like suffering.
once you enter the
Till that time it looks real. But as long as you are sleeping.
Oh, like that.
So whatever looks real in this here, the realization that it's all was a false comes when you are liberated.
Ah, like that. Because then we have an experience to compare it to.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Like while we are in the dream, when you are suffering, you are trying to find the solution. Is it not?
Right.
Because there is an experience real, you are trying to find a solution.
Yeah.
So while we are in the material world, where we are suffering, we are trying to find the solution here, there.
Oh, like that.
So everything seems to be very real, and we are acting on that platform. What is the cause of my suffering? Kala, karma, sabhava, this, that. But when you are awake, you realize it is all false. But that is from that platform you realize, not while you are in the material world. Fine? So I have answered your question. Later we can discuss more if you want. Okay. Which verse?
11.
As
As the
10th we
moon,
have covered, yeah, 11th. Yeah.
as the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter.
Okay, so again, how, why the jiva, pure jiva, is having reflecting the quality of matter, basically, or so how the jiva identify the matter and suffer? Basically, the question is that the jiva, how the pure spiritual jiva exhibits hatred, illusion, envy. Jiva is pure. How it exhibits such base qualities? So that is being answered by showing that moon, it's like the moon which quivers in the reflection. The moon is not quivering, but the reflection quivers. Why? Because the qualities of water are imposed upon the moon. Similarly, the quality of the body are imposed upon the soul in this way. But in the material existence, the qualities of the body are imposed. So therefore, material existence is like a imposition on the jiva, and the jiva identifies with that. Jiva feels, oh, I am quivering. There's fear. The fear doesn't exist in jiva. But the quality of the body is imposed on the jiva. Jiva becomes fearful. It's like the reflection of the moon quivers.
But there is a third person seeing the episode, right? Moon, water, and a third person is seeing. Here who is the third person?
Supreme Lord is the self-life, they are explaining.
Acha.
And when we get out, we can also be able to.
Okay.
So I explained already.
Liberated.
This from the liberated perspective. Okay, text 12.
But that misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, through the process of devotional service to the Lord in the mode of detachment.
Okay, so this, what is the solution now? He describes the solution to this unfortunate condition of living entity. Sava nivritti dharmena. Nivritti dharma is here bhakti mishra jnana, path of detachment, knowledge that brings detachment. Bhakti mishra jnana is same as jnana only. The real process of jnana has to have an element of bhakti for it to function. So here he describes bhakti mishra jnana, the process of jnana which brings detachment. If the living entity comes to the knowledge and Atma Gyan comes, that I am the spirit soul, right? That means the artificial suffering will stop. The suffering due to misidentification, the dream-like body. The living entity realizes its position as Atma, the suffering will stop. Jnana can help. Jnana can bring the living entity to the platform of Atma realization. And then by the mercy of the Lord, right, when the living entity, first by the process of jnana, he is saying, one will destroy the cause of suffering. Okay? And then by the mercy of Bhagavan, when bhakti arises, one bondage will also be cut.
Oh, the two things question asked,
Hmm.
Maya.
So he proposed that by the jnana, come to the platform of knowledge, right, the living entity's cause of suffering, ignorance plus bondage by Maya. By the process of jnana, remove the ignorance, come to the platform of Atma realization. Then, when bhakti arises, by the mercy of Lord, bondage will also be cut. Or the bhakti element in the jnana itself will destroy the bondage when that bhakti portion increases. Okay, so primarily the process of jnana is described over here.
So, 12, but
Sorry?
I could not read it because it's talking like in the translation.
See, what happened is Prabhupada's translation focuses on bhakti only, actually. Okay, so Prabhupada doesn't go into the detail of technical details. Then because ultimately he comes to bhakti. After jnana, he says best thing is to do bhakti only. So therefore Prabhupada remains focused on ultimate bhakti only. Even when jnana is being described, when Ashtanga Yoga is described, Prabhupada purposely focusing on bhakti only. And that is the beauty of Prabhupada's purpose. He doesn't let the devotee deviate from bhakti. But from technical understanding, first the jnana is prescribed over here, technically. But then ultimately Maitreya also prescribed bhakti. But Prabhupada from the beginning prescribed bhakti. Not to confuse the audience also. So Prabhupada, you getting the point?
Yeah. that once we have jnana, then it can remove the ignorance, and once you receive the mercy from Krishna, then
Bondage
it
is
removes
destroyed.
the bondage. That's the main point, right?
Yeah, but he is saying that Prabhupada doesn't talk of jnana in the translation. Nivritti dharmena is a path of jnana. So Maitreya first says, practice bhakti mishra jnana. Jnana will destroy the ignorance, and the bhakti part in the jnana process will relieve you from the bondage.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a primarily what text 12 is recommending is jnana only.
But the jnana will be applied in bhakti, which will then remove the
Jnana has an element of bhakti in it. When you say jnana, or jnana yoga, or ashtanga yoga,
Right.
means there is an element of bhakti.
So jnana yoga has an element of bhakti.
Oh yes.
I thought jnana yoga is just only jnana yoga.
No. Nothing works without bhakti. Even karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga has to have an element of bhakti for it to be successful.
But predominantly is karma. And
Predominant is karma. But there is an element of bhakti for any path of yoga to be a result, there has to be an element of bhakti. Write it down. Karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, they have a element of bhakti which only gives success, which only brings the result of karma, jnana and yoga. Without bhakti, no process works.
Success.
Remember that, this is very important.
In Bhakti Shastra they said like there's a bhakti in between to like give a touch
Hmm?
to karma
There is-
jnana, to give a touch so that it can become fulfilled.
No, there is a in the process of karma also there is a bhakti. Because all the sacrifice, Varishik sacrifice, Vishnu is worship, there is the bhakti element. The jnana super soul, the 400 form. Right? So there is some element of deity worship in jnanis is described. Some meditation on super soul is there, process of jnana. There are some elements of bhakti in minor proportion. So only the bhakti gives result in all the processes. Remember that. So therefore this jnana is described, but there is inherent bhakti in the jnana which will destroy bondage. First the knowledge will destroy ignorance, then the bhakti will destroy the bondage, and then the jnani will be liberated. Jnani will be liberated. Thirteenth.
When the senses are satisfied in the seer, super soul, the person embodied and made in him, all miseries are completely vanquished as after a sound sleep.
Okay, so so when the living entity turns toward the Supreme Lord, then all ones basically it is just again summarizing the same thing. That the call of living when the senses are satisfied in the seer super soul means when the living entity turns his face towards Krishna. The living entity is Krishna Vimukh. When it is become Krishna Unmukh, then all the misery will be destroyed as if after a sound sleep. What is the example of sound sleep? That when the senses of the living entity become fixed on the Lord, they no longer function externally. At that point, suffering is destroyed completely. Example of senses not functioning in deep sleep, basically, as if after a sound sleep. Text 13.